All right, welcome to America This Week. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm Walter Kern.
We're going to do an updated version of Pee-wee's Playhouse today. We're going to have a word of the day. A word that until today I have never spoken in my entire life. So, Racket readers and HEW listeners, our word of the day is homologous.
Homologous. HOMOLOGOUS.
Can we get the pronunciation?
Homologous.
Homologous. Homologous. Homologous.
Okay, that's enough homologuses.
How many times do they try to drill that into the youthful brain at the Pronunciation Academy?
I think if you play enough video games, you got to get it at least 6 or 7 times before it sticks.
Right.
But so, Walter, what does homologous mean?
Homologous means that if something is homologous, it means it has the same shape or structure as something else. So the way I used it before the show that brought up this whole matter was I said, I'm looking at the Israel conspiracy theory that they control Trump, and I'm seeing something that is homologous to Russiagate. You just substitute Netanyahu for Putin, which is interesting because probably there couldn't be two more opposite leaders in terms of interest. I mean, I don't know that Putin and Netanyahu have much in common in terms of their desires for the world.
No, or indeed their attitude towards Judaism. I would
suggest their attitude toward Judaism, but the same. It's becoming the same sort of conventional wisdom among talkers that just as Putin controlled Trump in the first administration, Netanyahu controls him in this administration. And it would seem that people who don't like Trump have a trope that they want to push, which is that for all his bluster and his would-be, pseudo-authoritarian, come on, he's somebody else's bitch. And
right.
And so they've just decided he's somebody else's bitch this time. And it feels the same in that no one can provide me the proof that I need as a reporter, but everybody can provide me all the circumstantial evidence,
Yeah. So the dictionary.com definition of homologous is having the same relation, relative position, or structure. For example, biology of organs, similar in position, structure, and evolutionary origin, but not necessarily in function. Quote, right. A seal's flipper is homologous with the human arm. So, yes, this scandal is homologous with that scandal in a number of key respects. It's about the president being essentially the puppet of a foreign power. It's built atop a story that's essentially about the journey of unseen proof. Right. And we'll get into that in a moment because there are a lot of similarities in the way this is being reported. Also, once again, it cashes in on some fixations on both the left and the right, sure. In order to seem more realistic. Now, I will say that this story has a little bit more meat on the bone, if only because there's been a significant amount of reporting about Epstein and Israel before this all happened. I mean, that goes back quite a long way, but as we'll see, the story is similar in a lot of ways. Also, Michael Wolff is present in both of them.
Wherever Michael Wolff goes, I am dubious. I got to say,
I mean, there are Michael Wolff is a fascinating character. We could do an entire show just on him. He's he's really pioneering a new form of journalism or anti-journalism or something, in which you go into it with the idea that you're going to burn all of your sources, that that the public is going to maybe not believe half or more of what you report, that you yourself are going to be compromised, that you openly share drafts of your publications with your sources, and this is all okay. This is like this new thing, but there's an idea behind it, which is not completely insane, which is that the public does ultimately get something out of it. The problem is that none of it is reliable. So I don't know. We'll circle back, as they say, to Michael Wolff. But if you haven't read the Epstein files yet, and there's no possible way that anybody could read all of it, because it's 20,000 words worth of, or pages worth of stuff. When I went to open it this weekend, the first thing I got a prompt that said, "Are you sure you want to open 897 files?" And there's a lot of stuff in there, and it's a lot of it's provocative, and but the presence of Michael Wolff and Epstein. Well, Wolff is just a ubiquitous presence, but much of
he was his friend.
Well, right. Yes, exactly. And
I mean, he was his friend. He was his sort of co-conspirator in certain respects. I mean, the conversations that we have between them involve Wolff egging him on to go after Trump, basically.
Right. Exactly. And so the key quotes, the ones that supposedly implicate Trump, in some cases it's Epstein sending emails to himself. In other cases, it's Epstein talking to Wolff, and it's things like saying, like, him sending a note to Wolff in 2019. Of course, Trump knew about the girls, and so we have to work this hard just to find an insinuation.
Of course he knew about the girls. He said he knew about the girls.
Well, everybody knew about the girls, right?
But there's a Trump tweet from, I'm not sure when, it's at least 2014, could have been 12, in which he says something about, this Epstein is bad, all these girls, etc. That they've turned this around on Trump is breathtaking to me, because
okay, go ahead.
Because I've followed Epstein for as long as anyone, really, I have. I first heard about him, I don't know, 2011 or something like that. He had a presence down in Santa Fe. People forget that he had a big place in New Mexico, and he was involved with the Santa Fe Institute, which is a think tank kind of that combined physicists like Murray Gell-Mann, who I knew, the discoverer or the finder outer of the quark, the subatomic particle. Cormac McCarthy was part of the Santa Fe Institute. Sam Shepard, playwright, I believe. And the rumors about him went way back. He was not a secret to the world.
Right.
And merely knowing about him only suggests you're in the top 3% of rumor gatherers in America. But my sense of Epstein from the beginning, and I've seen, the Rolodex, I think, that belonged to Maxwell and so on, is that he was a hanger-on in the world of high academic and high social. I have a past girlfriend who was in Ghislaine Maxwell's Rolodex. I can tell you for a fact, knowing the social circles in which she moved and which the other people moved, that the number of Republicans involved in this is about 7%. He was the liberal establishment of the United States, whether it was Harvard, MIT, the Santa Fe Institute, the Clintons, etc.
Clinton Foundation.
Clinton Foundation, and that, and what we're finding out as I read it is stuff like Charlie Rose, Woody Allen, and Tina Brown just tweeted the other day, that she was invited to dinner and didn't want to go, and that night it was Charlie Rose, Woody Allen, and somebody else. Now I can tell you, Charlie Rose and Woody Allen are not the Republican establishment. Okay,
Right. Right.
Katie Couric, another one.
Yeah, and just to give an indication of what where Michael Wolff on the reliability scale might rest in this story, one of the items in this latest document dump is an 8,900 word feature that he never published on Epstein, and it's essentially the world as Epstein sees it. And if you go through, you'll see these descriptions. Here's him describing the women in Epstein's world. Epstein's young women mingle freely with his powerful guests, not so much as hostesses or, in tabloid language, harem-like, or as sex slaves, but often as attentive students that, of course, might be regarded as having its own fetish-like attraction. So essentially, he got access for, giving the Epstein version of what he was doing, which makes this correspondence between the two of them even more bizarre and suspicious, in hindsight. Anyway.
But let me give a little real reporting. I wasn't reporting when I found these things out. I was partying. But back in the day, before about 2011 or so, I used to hang out in the New York city club scene. I'd gotten divorced, and there were a lot of fancy places like that: the Standard Hotel, the Boom Boom Room, the Beatrice Inn downtown in Greenwich Village. And these were pretty louche places where a lot of models and photographers and artists and so on hung out. And the overlap between that group and Epstein was large. I didn't know that at the time, but as more and more has come out about him, I see that he was friends. I was 1 degree of separation from the guy all the time. And I've also known a couple of people who've gone to the island, a scientist and a business person who've, told me about it. Neither of them, the business person said to me he was a money launderer. This is all kind of a screen. The sex thing is the salacious part, but he was involved in financial shenanigans. That was his main, business, as it were. So the idea that he was some rare bird that was screened off from polite society is ridiculous. The guy was at the center of everything.
Right.
Right. We had Cindy McCain come out, I remember, on stage a couple of years ago and say, yeah, we all knew. We just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what exactly he was up to, but I started hearing his name. And then as more and more of the details came out, I went, wow, this, like I say, this guy knew everybody.
Yeah. So the reason that this is unavoidably a big story is because Trump made it one last year by saying that I'd have no problem, doing the Epstein.
It was Matt, it was a big story long ago. Like I say, I wrote a piece for the New York Times op-ed page on his death, and what year was that? 2019? I'm not sure. But it was a big story in the days of QAnon. The Q drops, or whatever they call them, were full of Epstein. But it all went to sleep during the Biden administration in a way that I found odd. It went dormant. Now, Trump brought it up, and because there was there's always an appetite to link Trump to anything, it became a big deal again. But I'm gonna assert or hazard a guess that this is all a boomerang. The people who want this stuff are going to regret wanting it.
Well, okay, so of that, I'm completely sure that we're going to show they're already regretting it, because it's already claimed one scalp, and we'll show that in a few minutes. One Democrat has already had a very bad day as a result of these new releases. One close to my heart, but we'll get to that. So yeah, look, this is a big deal in MAGA world because both Dan Bongino and Kash Patel said they thought the circumstances of his death were suspicious. There was a widespread expectation that there were going to be releases. Laura Trump said there should be more transparency about this. A lot, as you say, a lot of Q people, a lot of MAGA people were anxious to see all this stuff. And in a way, I think it's even been the sudden decision over the summer to not release this stuff was exacerbated by the fact that they did do that with the Russiagate material. And they, even though there was quite a bit of internal opposition to that was overcome. In the case of the Epstein documents, that was less the case. And somehow it didn't happen. So, but now finally documents are coming out, and Trump finally has come around. So let's look at SOT 1. This is sort of reporting on Trump's sudden, I guess it's now a 360, right? He was for it. Then they were against it. Now he's for it again.
It is a big U-turn for President Trump. He is now encouraging House Republicans to vote this upcoming bill in the House, which would basically compel the Department of Justice to release its files on the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who died in prison back in 2019. Let me show you the post on Truth Social overnight. The president saying House Republicans should vote to release the files because we have nothing to hide, and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetuated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party. Trump added, let's start talking about the party's record-setting achievements and not fall into the Epstein trap, which is actually a curse on the Democrats, not us. Now, the president has repeatedly called this Epstein probe, which has gained steam on Capitol Hill, even in just recent days.
I'm so tired of that picture.
From House Speaker Mike Johnson over the weekend, who says this is all about politics, not transparency.
Remember, the Biden DOJ had every one of these files in their possession for 4 years, and neither Hakeem Jeffries or Ro Khanna or Thomas Massie or any of them ever said a word about it. President Trump has clean hands. He's not worried about it. I talk to him all the time. He has nothing to do with this. He's
Matt, this is rope-a-dope. Mark my words. This was all rope-a-dope. Yep. The only way to get Epstein back into the conversation was for Donald Trump to look like he might be dirty. That caused the wolves to start baying and the pack to close in. And now they're going to flip the switch on this stuff, and it's going to look terrible because Epstein, I promise you, was American intelligence.
American intelligence. So
yes.
So remember
he worked in the United States. His island was in the United States. You're telling me that some foreign country was able to exclusively control a Virgin Islands operation? What? Plaskett. That's another.
Well, we'll come to
that's another data point.
Moment. Yeah,
there's no way that this guy was operating outside with American presidents In his web, he was somehow completely a foreign controlled operator. No freaking way. It just doesn't. It doesn't stand to reason. And the big secret about Epstein is that he was, I believe, probably FBI, CIA, and whatever else he might have been, because these places all, they shuffle their men. Sometimes they're operating under this flag, sometimes they're operating under that flag. You have plausible deniability. You can say that they work for somebody else when really they work for you. What we're going to find out is this guy was so deep in America. Oh, come on. He was working for another country exclusively while suborning all these great American scientists who are, part of the military industrial complex, physicists, etc. No way. No way.
Well, there's a reason why people believe it. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell, her father Robert Maxwell had very close ties with Israel.
Sure.
There was a kind of a loosely reported story. Again, very much in the Russiagate tradition, third hand, a long time ago, in which Monica Lewinsky talked about Bill Clinton believing that he was being monitored by a foreign embassy in connection with the story. But yes, I when you get into the nitty gritty of it, and we'll get into it with the Plaskett story, it feels a lot more like the domestic version. We all remember there was a famous story in the Daily Beast it's Vicky Ward, right, as the reporter who did that one.
Well, was she Daily Beast? I think she was Vanity Fair at first.
I think the piece was in the Daily. It might have been Vanity Fair. You're right. But anyway,
Graydon Carter at Vanity Fair was accused of soft pedaling and killing a lot of this story. And then there was the network reporter, I forget, was she ABC, who was caught on hot mic saying that she'd been forced to kill the story.
Right, something like that. And then but the money quote, she said that Alex Acosta soft pedaled the prosecution of Epstein because he, quote, belonged to intelligence. Now,
which is true.
Well, right, it's probably true, but it's interesting. This is another Russiagate-ish thing. That little factoid has crept into public lore in ways that it's sometimes reported that he actually said it, that it's in a video somewhere, as opposed to being, basically an uncorroborated quote. Right. Acosta does talk about it. He was asked about it in an appearance, and he, in a way that was very cagey and odd, said that, I wouldn't necessarily give credence to that as fact or something like that. But he didn't say those exact words. So that. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm much more inclined to think that he.
Do you believe that the former prime minister of Israel can come and go from his mansion in a way that was photographed, and our intelligence agencies are just like, you'd have to believe that they are so intimidated by the other intelligence agency that they're afraid to do anything.
Well. And that frankly is the story that is arising on both the right and the left. Now you're seeing these headlines everywhere, again, by people and again, like Russiagate. Some of this is coming from people who I previously thought were pretty smart commentators.
Who was behind Russiagate ultimately in our investigation of the matter?
The Democratic Party and the intelligence services.
Yeah, and I think it's the same people.
It feels like it. One thing that's similar is that Saturday Night Live is doing commercials for it. Let's look at what's number stop 4. This is This is from the cold open this weekend.
I'm sorry, but even Trump's biggest supporters think that he should release the Epstein files. What does Trump have to hide?
I could answer that. I am hiding almost nothing, just enough to make it extremely suspicious. But let me ask you a question. If there was something incriminating about me in the files, then why would I cover them up?
Wait, isn't that exactly why you would cover them up?
Okay, let me go again. If I was innocent, wouldn't I just release all the files?
Yes. Again, I think you're agreeing with what everyone is saying.
Okay, third time's a charm. Jeffrey Epstein, I barely knew the guy, okay, as evidenced by the thousands of pictures of us together dancing and grinding our teeth at various parties, always leering and pointing at something just off camera, probably a book we're excited to read.
Okay, what about the specific email where Epstein said that Trump was the dog that hasn't barked?
Okay, first of all right, I'm not a dog. I'm not a dog. I'm more of a cub or possibly an otter. Definitely not a twink. I think that's clear. Not a twink, right? Maybe twunk. You know, gays have words for everything, right? Kiki. We like to say kiki.
All right, enough.
If you want
My own funniness limit is getting smaller every year, but it doesn't that just exactly remind you of the total anti-humor from the Mueller hysteria days?
The value I bring to this show, Matt, is not really that of an investigative reporter like you, but a guy who's been everywhere, who's been around, who knows who Saturday Night Live is. You know, my ex-mother-in-law, Margot Kidder, was a host of Saturday Night Live. She knew
the star of one of the great movies of all time.
Yeah, she knew all the Canadian mafia that makes Saturday Night Live. Okay, from Lorne to whoever. Saturday Night Live is a certain place with a certain complexion that does certain jobs. Okay, and that job that they just did there is homologous with the jobs they've done in the past around Russiagate and so on. It's insinuation, bad humor. It goes off into strange imprecations against Trump. I love how they use gay humor against someone when in fact they should be celebrating according to their usual ideology, anyone being gay. They should be glad if Trump's gay. But in any case,
we missed. We had the word of the day. We have to hear it again in the spirit of Pee-wee. Can we get the pronunciation?
Homologous. Homologous. Homologous.
Okay, we got 3. That's good.
That is a cross between homosexual and humongous. Yeah, look at that homologous thing of his.
It's totally homologous. It's homologous to the Santa Muller routines. Remember that?
Yeah, exactly.
All I want for Christmas is a coup. And we look back at that now and we think, God, that was so fucking crazy, right? And what reason is there to think that anything has changed?
Zero. I mean, there's zero reason to think anything's have changed because it worked. I mean, we're still trying to deprogram people from that damn thing. And it went on for so long, and it was coming from so many directions in so many media and formats that it just burned itself into people's brain. And the funny thing now, Matt, is justice or some sort of disclosure about Russiagate is finally at hand. And here we get another one.
Oh, I know.
If you want to know what is likely being distracted from, to me, it's this. We're John Brennan getting indicted, Adam Schiff perhaps getting indicted, James Comey under indictment, more and more of these people being flushed out into the open. The other thing, COVID. We're getting more and more information about COVID. Ralph Barrick, a name that America didn't really know. Only the mavens knew who Ralph Barrick was. His work at North Carolina.
Shout out to the excellent reporter Emily Kopp, who has
his associations with the intelligence agencies, or with the CIA in particular. Just as we're getting the belated facts about these real scandals, we're getting whole new ones that are, going to blanket the attention that might have gone to these other things.
Yeah, it was amazing. The story came out in the Daily Caller last week by the reporter who broke a lot of the original COVID stuff through FOIA work. Got a lot of the original key names, and it's just amazing stuff. We have emails, back and forth between the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence Office, and Ralph Barrick and all these other people back in 2015 talking about coronaviruses and Wuhan, and it's a non-story in the rest of the media. This is where it's
all a distraction from Epstein.
It's all a distraction from Epstein, apparently. So
the real story.
Yeah. And it's grabbed hold of a significant portion of the like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's look at that. This is top 3 from CNN.
It's the political breakup heard round the world. President Trump severing ties with at least one of his closest allies, declaring, "I am withdrawing my support and endorsement of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene," even calling for primary challenges against his one-time loyalists and attacking her as, quote, "wacky, a ranting lunatic, a rhino, and a traitor." This is days before the House of Representatives is set to vote on releasing the Epstein files. It's a stunning breach between 2 MAGA leaders. What do you think happened? What do you think is the reason for this?
Unfortunately, it has all come down to the Epstein files, and that is shocking. And, I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children who are in terrible sex abuse situations, and I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that. I believe the country deserves transparency in these files, and I don't believe that rich, powerful people should be protected if they have done anything wrong.
Okay, all right. So
Dana Bash. Sorry. I mean, Dana Bash and Marjorie Taylor Greene talking, and Marjorie also, I think, apologized for being part of toxic politics, she said.
I know. And let's remind everybody, Dana Bash married to Jeremy Bash. Am I right? Let's make sure that's right. Greg, can we take a look? Make sure I'm right about that.
Nicole Wallace and Dana Bash are the 2 people. If they're in the shot, you can be sure the puppet strings are just above the shot.
Right. Well, look, at least that one didn't go to the place that almost everybody else is going to, which is the idea that this is a conspiracy to protect America's relationship with Israel, and that Trump is bowing to that. I do want to know what the reason is for the about face. I think it's kind of a political unforced error. I don't know why they did it.
Turned on Marjorie Taylor Greene.
No. In terms of changing their mind this summer in July about releasing the documents.
It created an
Yeah.
unstoppable demand for the documents.
Right.
It's trolling 101 to pretend that you have something to lose, create a furor, have people who are, on all sides suddenly, absolutely craving disclosure, and then give it to them good and hard. And that's what's going to happen.
Well, it's already happening. So
yeah.
And this is one of the funnier political story. Well, it's actually not funny. It's not funny when you dig under the surface of it because, well, there are a lot of details in this particular part of the story that are really unbelievably creepy. So, for all those who may not remember, when I testified before the House Weaponization of Government Committee about the Twitter files a million years ago, or 2 years ago, as it turned out, the ranking member of that committee, the ranking Democrat on that committee, was the not even a voting member of Congress, the delegate from the Virgin Islands named Stacey Plaskett, who called me a so-called journalist and later threatened me with prosecution and jail sentence and all kinds of other things. And I remember thinking during the hearing that the questioning was so bizarre and so hostile and seemingly so coordinated. I remember thinking, are they getting fed the questions from somebody? Like, where is this coming from? So one of the things that's in that document dump that went out last week, and this is to your point, Walter, about how whoever thinks this is a good idea is probably going to regret it. There's a series of texts between Epstein and a redacted personage who turns out to be Stacey Plaskett. And what it is Epstein texting Plaskett in the middle of a hearing where they're interrogating Michael Cohen. I believe this is from the House Oversight Committee. And Epstein is literally puppeteering Plaskett, putting words in her mouth. At one point, he suggests to her that it was significant that that Cohen had mentioned Trump's was it his secretary? I'm trying to remember what her role was. Rona Graff, his executive assistant, and he mentioned that, and essentially Plaskett panics, texts back, Rona who? I'm up next, hurry. Who is this? And so the Washington Post did the story, and they put together a video, like they matched the time coding to the actual moment, so you can see.
Kudos to the Washington Post, by the way.
Yeah,
kind of story I didn't think they did anymore.
It's fucking hilarious. Like let's just look at this if we can.
This was when Barack Obama was president of the United States. And while we were once driving through a struggling neighborhood in Chicago, he commented that only black people could live that way. Attorney-client privilege, yes, I will turn it over.
You, as my friend Mr. Meadows pointed out, misled this committee even today in a written submission that
God, she's reading it.
You have suggested you are going to review that. Are you going to review it in our next break to correct the record, yes or no?
Yes.
Quick, I'm up next. Is that an acronym?
Or were involved in the campaign as a representative, as a spokesman, even in your words today. It was your idea for the campaign dating back to 2011. Is that accurate, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Weisenberg and other individuals, Ms. Rona. Who are those individuals? Are they with the Trump Organization?
They are.
Are there other people that we should be meeting with?
Miss Rona.
Alan Weisselberg is the chief financial officer.
You got to quickly give us as many names as you can so we can get to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Think about what's
Okay, so,
going on
Ms.
in her
Rona,
head
what
right
is Ms.
now.
Rona's
I
position?
know.
Is the
She just learned that this is a person.
And was
She
she
I
didn't
know.
even
corroborated
know it
any
wasn't an
statements that were
acronym.
made here?
Yes, she was. Her office is directly next to his. And
Good work.
she's involved in a lot that went on.
Okay, so that
So
that
Matt,
is horrifying on so many different levels.
if I told you that I think Jeffrey Epstein sometimes puppeteered Congress people during hearings. I think he was sometimes on the phone to them, suggesting questions from his vast trove of compromising material. Okay. You would say I was freaking nuts,
Right?
but he was doing it. And was he only doing it once? Did he only do it once? Who knows? I doubt it. People rarely do anything once when it's that when it's that complicated. Jeffrey Epstein was the man behind the curtain in congressional hearings. We thought he was some distant guy. This proves my point again. Listen, man, you think you can text Congress people in the middle of a hearing and not alert the intelligence agencies of the United States? Are you kidding me?
Well, I mean,
and you can text them with questions that are affirming their own goals. At the time of this hearing, the intelligence agencies of the United States wanted nothing more than to bring down Donald Trump. Oh, it just happens that Jeffrey had the same goal, and he had access, and he wasn't being apparently disciplined or caught out at it. This is all so absolutely plain as day to anybody with common sense.
It's incredible. So if you've ever been to Congress, if you ever watched these hearings, which they do go on for forever, and look, in defense of the members, it's impossible to expect that they would know every minute detail.
She was asking a question in which she couldn't even confirm that Rona was a person until 1 second before. And then she went into this thespian act where,
I know.
Where she'd always known it was a person, where she was suggesting that this was a plot that she'd been aware of for a long time. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein had just texted her seconds before, and she didn't even know that it was a name.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you watch the way this normally happens, an aide will come over, will whisper in the ear of the member.
Usually, Jeffrey Epstein texts the aide, not the congressperson.
Right. So this is like a level up from the usual shenanigans that you would see, and imagine how out to sea you would have to feel as a member of Congress to have no idea who this person is.
That's because she's used to being a puppet. She is a puppet. Most of what she asks is probably given to her seconds before. Her particular skill is acting as though she has agency in situations in which she is a complete dupe. And what caused her to trust Jeffrey Epstein enough that she would ask his questions in an open hearing, almost moments after hearing them? She had to have developed a relationship with him that was so close, so automatically and reflexively deferential, that it really went back.
Well, it does go back. So that's the thing. So when you look into Stacey Plaskett and Jeffrey Epstein, first of all, the first thing you'll find is a lawsuit that was filed. I'm trying to think of what year it was. I got it's right in front of me. Sorry. Anyway, it was filed by 5 former victims, Jane Doe victims of Epstein against the government of the United States, Virgin Islands, First Lady Cecile DeJong, Governor Kenneth Mapp, Senator Celestino White, Attorney General Vincent Frazier, Governor John DeJong, Senator Carlton Doe, Delegate Stacey Plaskett, and John Doe's 1 through 100. And this is Plaskett eventually filed a motion to get herself dismissed from the suit, and she was successful, but the original complaint is still on there. And I'm sorry, it's very damning. It talks about how she solicited $30,000 in donations from him, and did various tasks and helped secure a tax exemption. And the case refers to another lawsuit, and this one is called U.S. Virgin Islands v. J.P. Morgan Chase Bank. This is essentially the government suing Chase for failure to properly exercise AML controls, like anti-money laundering controls, involving Epstein, and to do oversight. In that suit, there's a host of information, and there's this amazing paragraph in the middle of it. It says, in October 2012, the Southern Trust Company, one of the companies Epstein owned, applied for economic benefits from the Virgin Islands Economic Development Commission, EDC, so the company could provide, quote, cutting-edge consulting services in the area of, quote, biomedical and financial informatics. Southern Trust Company received a 10-year package of economic incentives running from February 1st, 2013 until January 31st, 2023, that included a 90% exemption from income taxes and 100% exemptions from gross receipts, excise, and withholding taxes in the Virgin Islands. The amount that it works out to be some enormous amount, like $300 million. But guess who what the general counsel of the Virgin Islands Economic Development Commission was for 5 years until months before that deal?
You tell me. Her.
Stacey Plaskett.
Yeah.
And
did she work for Israel too?
I mean, I guess this is a little side project. Epstein didn't. He wasn't. I don't know. He had more than one employer apparently. No, Plaskett was also. She was an attorney. If you look at her LinkedIn page, you'll see that there's like a 3-year gap between 2012 and 2015 when she was elected. She was an attorney at a firm, Keller Halls Ferguson Croblin, which is Epstein's tax lawyer, the one that helped him buy Little St. James Island. And there's a deposition involving her from 2023 when she talks. And they're saying there are questions like, have you ever done any work for Epstein or Epstein related companies? And the answer is, I don't recall. And then there's another one. What were you doing at a meeting at his house? Could you possibly have been soliciting $250,000 for the DCCC? And her answer, it was classic. It was, that does not sound unreasonable. So yeah, there's a long tangled web, and Plaskett's individual involvement to me is less interesting than the fact that there's John Doe's 1 through 100 with government officials.
Yep. And
basically every government official in the U.S. Virgin Islands is on record. The Chase suit contains exhibits that show records of these transfers. So there's your payola story out in, hiding in plain sight. And the question, did you ever do anything for Jeffrey Epstein? She says no. Well, I guess aside from ask questions at his behest in a live televised hearing, I don't know. So I wonder how many of these rabbit holes there are with this guy. I mean, I'm guessing there are thousands, right?
Endless rabbit holes, but they've turned it all into the Trump rabbit hole. And no lawyer, I'm the son of a lawyer, no lawyer forgets a client of that size.
Right. Yeah.
No lawyer forgets somebody who has an island in their, as long as we're in conspiracy theory land these days, with everybody having their own half-assed idea about who is who, I'll tell you one thing I've heard about Jeffrey Epstein, and the thing I just stated, which was that a friend told me it's money laundering more than anything. And there you have evidence of that, actually, is that, and you can take this with a grain of salt, but I heard it from someone who I would consider a good source. There's no way to confirm stories in this realm. Everything's so secretive, so loaded, so bound up with, intelligence and dark politics. But I heard Epstein was a place where you got your diploma if you wanted to play the game. If you wanted to play the big game, you went and you submitted to Epstein Island fun, and you were never yourself again. You were never your own man again. And it makes sense to me, because this level of shenanigans where you're calling up Congress people, I think that person's right. They won't release the files because everyone is dirty. Noam Chomsky went.
Right. I know. Who didn't go? Like the Cookie Monster is like the
Stephen
only
Hawking. Stephen Hawking went. There are pictures of Stephen Hawking on Epstein Island. Okay. There are pictures of Ghislaine Maxwell's sub with Stephen Hawking in it. Okay. Fill in everybody between, Bill Clinton, Woody Allen, etc., and you have got the entire map of the American establishment, right. Scientific, artistic, political, and so on. The whole place is going to fall. But this thing, the Plaskett thing, is amazing because it's not getting the attention it should. I mean, it's shocking that this guy had call-in privileges to the United States Congress. And why was Stacey Pliskett even on that committee? She's a non-voting delegate from the Virgin Islands. She's not even a real congressperson.
Well, that's what I was wondering when I was testifying. Like, how is a not even really member of Congress the ranking member of this weaponization of government committee, and she appears to not know anything about anything
because she is a microphone or a loudspeaker through which other people speak. That's why. And when you're willing to do that, you could probably be the head of any committee.
Well, right, and if your past service as an attorney involved approving tax credits or whatever, public tax credits, you might have a whole lot of friends in politics. That might explain that kind of thing. I don't know. But when I saw that thing about her asking about Miss Rona without having, flying completely blind, it just explained a whole lot. Like, here's a person who calls me a so-called journalist on...
we don't know that she heard your name before 5 minutes.
I know, right? It's just such a weird thing. And how often is that happening? I mean, you've seen what Congress has devolved into in the last 5 years or so.
Matt, the there is no Santa Claus moment for Walter Kern came last January when I was sitting at the RFK confirmation hearings, and I was so close. I could see in a way that you don't on C-SPAN what every single member was doing, who they were talking to, when they were off camera, when they weren't asking questions and so on. And every one of them, not every one of them, the ones who were most adversarial all seemed to be acting to me, flat acting. They were getting tips from their, from their aides. They were often not listening to the testimony at all because they were being prepped to say something. And I just went, this isn't, I used to direct plays and write plays. I said, this is a flat performance. There is nothing about this that speaks of, preparation, organic feeling. They could have been switched off and turned in another direction by a text message, was my feeling.
Right. Right. And I guess the pioneering development, though, is, again, I've seen, going back 25 maybe years, that members will take a piece of paper from their chief of staff or the chief of staff of a committee and read something out with total trust because they know the chief of staff.
Right.
And that's the person's job. Like, your balls are on the line if you get something wrong for the boss. But to sit there with a phone
talking to a convicted sex
no, not yet, but by then.
What year was that?
This was 2019. It was just before he was convicted.
He was convicted in 2011.
Oh, of the other, yes, the other offense, right? Yeah.
I mean, this was a guy who was already dubious at best, and he's your trusted source for questions to Michael Cohen. And she poses as this moralist. I mean, you would have thought with you, Matt, can you imagine a friend of Jeffrey Epstein who takes dictation from him was accusing you of being some,
I know, nefarious. What was the word? It was a threat to these two. Michael Schellenberger and I were like, we were a threat to something. I forget what it was, but anyway, yeah, absolutely crazy. And that had to come from somewhere. And now I'm beginning to wonder whether they're just getting compromised actors in these spots.
I think they are,
and maybe that's by design. But the problem is that this, it's gotten to the point where, and you texted about this today, or you tweeted about this today. There are so many conspiracy theories out there now that it's become overwhelming for people.
It's chaff. We're being bombarded. I mean, just the Charlie Kirk killing has, raised 1,000 conspiracy theories. The Epstein business, other business, all I think to cover, frankly, the real exposure of what have been actually investigated, the Russiagate matter, and now the COVID pandemic.
And before that, the censorship stuff, frankly.
And before that, the censorship stuff. This just looks to me like bombardment, confusion, fracturing of the mind, an attempt to make everybody so sick of it or so attached to such tiny and intense obsessions that they don't see anything larger, all at the moment when we're starting to get, as I say, the fruits of real investigations into incredibly important subjects like, the compromise of the Trump administration by a cabal of intelligence and law enforcement people and politicians. Just as it's reaching the top, just as COVID is starting to become clear, the one thing you can no longer argue with COVID is whether it was, escape from a bat cave. It didn't. Now we know it came from a lab, and frankly, it was a lab that we had way more to do with. You would think it was China. You'd think it was some independent enemy base. No, it wasn't. It was a cutout for our own biological warfare program.
And why is this not the biggest story in the world? I don't understand. By the way, I was half wrong before. Dana Bash is divorced from Jeremy Bash, who also used to be an MS Now contributor, but in addition was the chief of staff for none other than John Brennan.
Right.
So that's just to give you an idea of who you're watching when you're watching these things. Everybody's married to everybody.
I was on a national comedic talk show once, and there are only a couple of those that deal in current events. And there was a CNN reporter, a top-ranked CNN reporter. And the minute we got off, she was talking about her husband, who was in the administration, in the Obama administration at the time. And as though we were all on the same team, as though we all went out front to inform America. But the minute we got backstage, we talked about how we could advance certain agendas for certain parties. She had no shame about it. I think she thought I was pre-vetted. If I was on that show, then I must be in on it.
I think we're talking about the same show, and I had an identical experience.
Yeah.
where somebody came up to me after the show. I argued ferociously with somebody, I think on that same show. And then afterwards, that person came up to me and tried to be my friend, and I was like, get away from me. You know?
It's all in the game, you know?
Right,
It's all...
yeah. It's like The Wire. It's all in the game, right? So just quickly, one of the other things that's homologous. Okay, we got to put it up. Homologous, can we get it up?
Homologous. Homologous. Homologous.
Okay, homologous to Russiagate is the manner in which the case is being made. So how was the Russiagate case made? Significantly, it was done by reporting on the contents of reports that nobody could see, but everybody could talk about, and the official actions with regards to those reports. So in the very beginning, it was mostly about the Chris Steele dossier, right? So we didn't know what was in it. We didn't know whether it was confirmable or not, but we did know that somebody passed it to John McCain, that it was traveling around Washington, that the top intelligence chiefs briefed Donald Trump about it, and that he was told that they were going to keep it close hold or closely held. And, you know, once they did that, people like, you know, the CNN commentators had a way to report on the stuff that was, you know, fictional all along. Well, it's the same thing here. We have discussions about you know, it's the dog that didn't bark, right? So that's just another way of referring to something that we can't see or confirm or do anything. And it's as you point out, Walter, it's impossible to confirm or unconfirm these stories because there's nothing to go on, right? Until we see all the stuff. None of this is really indicative of anything, except, you know, we end up playing this game, and I feel guilty even for addressing it today, but of, you know, why now? Why change your mind now? So let's look at SOT 5. This is Jake Tapper talking about, and remember, Jake Tapper played he was a big figure in the original Russiagate thing. Here he is, I guess, talking about in his own personal video. Let's listen.
President Trump went on Truth Social on Sunday night and said, quote, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the thing. There doesn't need to be a vote. President Trump is the president of the United States. He can tell the Justice Department right now, right this second, release the Epstein files, redact, take out the names of the survivors and the victims, but release the Epstein files. What this legislation does is just gets the Justice Department to release the Epstein files.
He's got to wear an Eagles
This is all just
jersey.
an exercise in theater, because it could be released right now. And yet, because Attorney General Pam Bondi has blocked the release of the files, there was then legislation introduced in Congress by Congressman Tom Massey to have the Justice Department release the files. And then that legislation was blocked by the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, at the behest of President Trump. And so there was a discharge petition, which would force the Speaker to bring this legislation to the floor of the House for a vote. And President Trump lobbied against any Republicans signing.
All right.
So what's your point, Jake? You don't want them released now, or you do?
Right?
What's your point? That if it's released by Congress, you're not going to accept it, but if Trump released it himself through the Justice Department, you know what I suspect, Jake? I suspect that the jig is up for you and everybody else, because one thing I've seen so far in the Epstein files is a real coziness with journalism and journalists. Katie Couric, Charlie Rose. You mean you were what was so bad about you that you didn't get invitations to these parties?
Well, that's also similar to Russiagate, right?
Exactly. What's similar to Russiagate is that the perpetrators were the accusers.
Right. Just quickly to 195114, another punchable face. There's a German word that I think means something like a face screaming to be punched. I think it's like Backpfeifengesicht. If anybody speaks German out there,
you know,
I got that right.
Do you remember where punchable face came from?
No.
I believe it came from a man named Reza Aslan talking about the kid who was the Covington kid. Is that right?
Oh, right. Yes. Yep. The punchable face. Yeah. So yeah, like all this stuff, and another thing that reminds me of that period is that feeling of, when you're listening to a monologue by Tapper like that, my eyes start to glaze over, and and like you, I eventually get to a place where I say, wait, what is he saying? And that was very similar to the Russiagate period, where there would be these endless panel shows where they would discuss over and over again the meaning of this and that, and you would almost be narcotized watching it, unless you made a conscious decision to say, wait, what are they actually talking about, right? Like what's the thing that's actually being discussed? And at the middle of it, there was always nothing yet, right? And that's
right.
the case. That's the case here. The one concrete fact that we have is that they decided not to release the stuff earlier this summer. And as you say, that could have been a PR move. I don't believe it. I'm not sure I believe it because it's already cost them something politically, but maybe that
only they know what they have, however.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, the decision not to play a card may depend on what the card is, and we don't know, and they do. So the presumption has been that it's so damaging to them that they don't want to play it. But one could also presume the opposite, that it's so advantageous that they want to control the timing, not someone else.
Right. Yeah, it could be that. We don't know.
Wait a second. Epstein's still alive. He just texted me. Amazing. This guy's everywhere. He said,
what did he say?
He said, you thought that was me on the gurney on the cover of the New York Post? I thought you were smarter than that, Walt. You think that the ghost who controls Congress would go out in an unprotected cell in New York? Ha ha ha. I will see you at Christmas.
Oh, man. Well, look, this thing, I think you're right. It's going to continue sucking up everybody's attention because
so let's play out what could happen when these files are released. Okay. Most damaging to Trump. Some absolute killer. Donald Trump was there with me at this X place at this time in some compromising situation. Down goes Donald Trump. Short of that, there's some more weird stuff where Trump gets mentioned. It doesn't come to much, but we get a lot of stuff about, him texting Congress, we know he went to the White House all the time. I mean, not under Trump.
Oh my God, the stuff about the Air Force, the Secret Service flights and Air Force One, and Clinton meeting him in Siberia for a humanitarian mission that had, in connection with the Clinton Foundation. Like,
since anyone can introduce a hypothesis, since it's open season on Epstein theories, I'll try this one. Trump didn't want to release it until these prosecutions are in place.
And until the Russiagate
until the Russiagate prosecutions are in place. For some reason, because it's looking like they're going to come at the same time.
That is true. Yeah.
And there's no way to make those sexier than to introduce an Epstein factor.
That's true. That's true.
In other words, there are conceivable motives for controlling the timing, and that Jake Tapper is so freaked out tells me something. Does he know what's in them? He can't, or maybe he does. In other words, he's so confident that they're going to be damaging, it seems, that he would have to know it, but except he doesn't. He's upset about something. What's he upset about?
I don't know. And for our listeners who are wondering what our feeling is about this, I mean, I want to see this stuff. I certainly do.
I do too.
Yeah.
But I've wanted to see it for so many years now, and I had to withstand being called all sorts of names for having premature interest in Epstein. I've got a PhD in damned Epstein. I've actually forgotten much of my education on the matter because I was so deep into it. And I can tell you that nothing about it suggests to me this is going to be the killer blow against Donald Trump. What I do know, and from talking, and I have intelligence sources, okay? I act like I'm making stuff up, but I'm not. There is a potential involvement with Jeffrey Epstein and the people that are Donald Trump's enemies that is likely to prove troubling, at least to both sides. I will stand on my contention that I think he was way more involved in the United States scene than he was the Israel agent who had somehow managed to compromise the entire U.S. establishment without the knowledge of our, or with, somehow with the cooperation of our, agencies. Doesn't stand to reason. I think this is going to be an exposure of really vast proportions, and we've just seen a touch of it. His influence in Congress.
Yeah, right. And that's my guess is that what it will expose, what these documents will expose, is systemic corruption on a scale previously not imaginable, right? Because with Epstein, just to take the example of the officials in both JP Morgan Chase and the U.S. Virgin Islands government, you're dealing with every single person has knowledge about who this person is and what he does. And, you know, it's one thing to look the other way when you're not sure if so-and-so might have a gambling conviction in their past or something like that. It's another thing entirely to talk about like systematic sex trafficker
and money
launderer, right?
And he's also in some way involved with the British. He just is. You don't go sit in the castles of the royal family with Ghislaine Maxwell and get photographed. You don't corrupt Prince Andrew. Listen, very quietly, Prince Andrew has been moved out of the royal family. They're stripping him of his titles right now. It just happened in the last couple of weeks. Are you kidding me? This guy had penetrated or was somehow a tool of the British at the highest levels.
Right.
And they have a lot of downside in Russiagate too. I mean, what we know now about the Russiagate operation was that it was a two-state job, at least.
Well, I mean, Russiagate, Britain's role in Russiagate it's another one of those stories that, you know, if we had a real press corps, there would have been God knows how many reporters assigned to that by now, right? And they're just not. Nobody does the work, right?
How come they never get mentioned? How come it's always Israel? But we have this guy who was palling around with the second in line for the throne, or whatever. I guess at one point maybe, and who has now been exiled practically from the monarchy of England, and no biggie. Talk about the dog that didn't bark.
Yeah, and you know the other thing, if you read these files, you'll see that Epstein himself, along with Wolf, I mean they sound almost like MSNBC commentators in the way they talk to each other. They have the classic TDS, and so the correspondence back and forth between them talking about things like, you know, this is the dog that didn't bark, or you know, Wolf saying that the central issue is Trump's relationship with this monster, or even Epstein suggesting to a New York Times reporter, "Hey, are you interested in pics of Trump with girls, my girls in their bikinis?" This is Russiagate all over again. It's the same thing. It's
the level of familiarity that is implied in these text and email exchanges is not. They just met yesterday. It's that this guy was a source, was a social, equal in some ways, that they went to him for stuff, that he came to them for stuff. They're probably who knows, maybe they were involved in a monetary or financial fashion in some cases. You know, Jeffrey can make a good investment for you. Who knows? But it is Russiagate again. They're all pals. The reason Michael Wolff, when I read those things, is talking to Epstein is that he knows Epstein is a blackmailer. So he's like, what do you got on Trump? Right.
But it's never specified. Right. So all of it is, I don't know. It's all ridiculous. It's all a carefully sculpted non-story, which again is right back where we were in 2018 and 2019. And this time, instead of anti-Russian hysteria, it's going to be Israel hysteria that's going to drive this whole thing. As you point out, like, and you just caught me screwing this up. Robert Maxwell's British, right?
Yes, he was.
You know,
he ran British newspapers. He was next to Rupert Murdoch as a purveyor of tabloid journalism in England. Ghislaine hung out with the royal family. if you map American society, which I have tried to do in an amateur way, okay, for 30, 40 years, who knows who hangs out with who, where do they hang out, what do they do together, who's friends, who dates, who hires each other. You will find that Jeffrey Epstein, since about the 1990s, has been 1 degree of separation from everyone, from entertainers to press people, to politicians, to royals. And you got to remember, the royal family of England in some ways is a pyramid. It is the peak of the pyramid, and even in terms of American social life. Those people come to America a lot, and the invitations that they give in England are answered by Americans. Vanity Fair in the 1980s, where I worked, was an absolute royal worship fest. The British kind of invasion of American and New York society, which began in the 80s, went on.
This is the precondition for Spy. Where
absolutely
cover. Yeah.
Absolutely. New York was edited by Tina Brown, former editor of the Tatler in the London Society magazine, whose husband was the former editor of the Sunday Times, Harry Evans. Many would have thought that he was also associated with the British establishment. Let's put it that way. And having gone to school over there, I can tell you that the difference between British intelligence and British high society is not a difference. Yeah. And so maybe Epstein will be an X-ray of our of our social map and its overlap with other places. But the first thing I think about with him is not Israel. I mean, that's there in the mix, but I feel like it's being fobbed off on them when in fact he's calling American congressmen, and he's talking to American journalists, and he's living on an American island, and he's
with the help of American officials.
With the help of American officials. I mean, we're either the biggest stoops in the history of mankind, and the Epstein maximalist explanation is he blackmailed everybody in America, so he had control.
Well, right, and again, this is the same.
Somebody could have took him if he had blackmailed everybody in America. There was a room somewhere at Langley or something where they'd say, we got to get rid of this guy a lot earlier than he left the scene.
Well, right, and this is it's the same thing in the sense that we had this story once that told us the Russians and the FSB and the SVR were so all powerful that they had discovered this new way of influencing American voters, and they were secretly getting Oppo on Hillary Clinton or fake Oppo on Hillary Clinton and passing it along to Julian Assange in transactions that somehow were not recorded by the NSA, and all of this was executed in a way, without any kind of pushback from the American intelligence services, who were sort of helpless to step in.
And then when it came time to prove it, what did they have? John Brennan talking to some rando in Virginia or something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It turned out to be a story about dialogue with ourselves, and I think there's still a lot of mystery with the Epstein story. I'm not the expert that a lot of people claim to be about this, but there are still unknowns, and there are still things that hopefully we'll find out if documents are released. I mean, reading some of the stuff just in a couple of hours over the weekend was incredibly entertaining. But
he was an instructor at the Dalton School. one of my best friends taught there for decades.
Oh God,
over
that's
the
right.
exact
Yeah,
period.
yeah.
He was an instructor at the Dalton School, the fanciest at that time, kind of semi-bohemian,
Oh, that's right. There's a tie that goes all the way back with Bill Barr.
Bill Barr's dad
Yeah.
was the headmaster.
So
Bill
it's
Barr's dad was intelligence. Okay, he was. He recruited. This origin story for Epstein is not as murky as people make out. I mean, the biggest Israel connection is Wexner, the guy who's gave him his money, head of the limited brands and so on, Victoria's Secret, etc. I mean, first of all, how secret could Epstein's predilections have been when his patron and the guy whose money he managed owned Victoria's Secret? I mean, the pipeline for young models around the world who thought they had a bod, I mean, this was all plain as day.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out more about it hopefully soon. The vote's tomorrow, right? So, and by the way, Jake Tapper, what you said about Trump was also true of Joe Biden. They could have he could have released the stuff with also last year. But we'll find out tomorrow what's going to happen. I suspect they have the votes now, right? So this is going to happen.
But what's Jake Tapper's problem? That if Congress votes for it, it's not as good as if Trump had just done it himself. They are trying to the very last minute to keep alive the suspicion that there's something there, and that Trump has been hiding it to save his own ass. I just don't think it's going to play out that way. There's knowing the players, knowing the history, knowing the constellation of social scenes, and what we've just seen now with people like Michael Wolff and Plaskett and so on, tells me the last group that I think is going to be injured by this is the Republican power structure.
Maybe right now it's going. There are some schisms, but we'll see what happens. I wanted to get to one other thing quickly. I know we don't have a ton of time, but let's look at SOT 13 first of all. This is video of a boat strike. All right, and then let's go to 15. This is a CNN report talking about Britain cutting off intel sharing over this.
A breaking news exclusive now coming into the situation.
Look at the nodding.
The United Kingdom is suspending, listen to this, suspending some of its intelligence sharing with the U.S. because of the Trump administration's strikes against alleged drug boats in the Caribbean.
We are joined now by senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak and CNN national security correspondent Natasha Bertrand. Natasha, to you first with this exclusive reporting. I mean, this is a big deal. The UK is arguably the closest ally to the United States when it comes to intelligence sharing. What else do we know?
Yeah, Pam, it's a really significant rupture here. Essentially, what we're learning is that the UK is no longer sharing intelligence with the US about these suspected drug trafficking vessels in the Caribbean because it does not want to be complicit in the US military's strikes on these drug vessels and believes fundamentally that the US military's use of force against these vessels violates international law, according to multiple sources that we spoke to. Now, previously, the UK had been happy to help the United States locate and interdict vessels that were transiting the Caribbean that appeared to be trafficking drugs. But the key difference, of course, is that it was helping the Coast Guard intercept those vessels, arrest those on board, seize the drugs, and allowing these individuals to have some semblance of due process. But now the U.S., of course, has started striking these boats unilaterally with military force, killing everyone on board. The total now for number of people killed is around 76. And we're told that the UK is deeply uncomfortable with that, and they believe that it is pretty blatantly.
So what I heard
Now-
there is what the UK doesn't like is the drugs being destroyed. Before, when they can be offloaded, by Coast Guard people and somehow go wherever drugs go after they're offloaded by the Coast Guard, it was fine. Don't kill the drugs. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody needs to do a history of the United States British relations, beginning with our revolution and then moving into the Opium Wars. This is the empire that destroyed China, destroyed it as a functional society with its opium trade. The British Empire, which ran the world through probably the dirtiest operations in the history of the world, the colonial empire that supposedly learn about in college and become anti-colonialist because of, is now giving us lectures about international law and this and that. Something odd about all this to me. Very odd.
So I was really struck by two things about this story. Number one, the exact same story that certain countries were halting intelligence sharing with the Trump administration appeared in January of 2017 over Russiagate. There were stories in Haaretz in Israel from various intelligence officials saying that there were no longer. The idea was that the American government was now compromised with Trump in office. So this thing has happened before, or that headline has been deployed before. The thing that strikes me about this, and just for the record, I'm against wanton assassination of people without proof, or I did stories about
the British government didn't stop intelligence sharing over Abu Ghraib.
Well,
they didn't stop intelligence sharing over the revelations of torture,
or drone war,
or drone wars, or anything else. But somehow, these drugs going to the bottom of the sea that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars really bugs them.
So we've been living in a world for about 15 years now, where the United States government has claimed the right to execute even its own citizens using drones or missiles if they're deemed to be, guilty of aiding terrorism. We had the famous case, right, with Anwar al-Awlaki. I did a story about another guy who sued the government because he wanted to get off the kill list. Remember those stories where Barack Obama was about Terror Tuesdays, where they would get together every Tuesday morning, I guess, and they would have sessions, sort of like the scene in Animal House where they looked at the photos of the possible pledges and said yes or no, and they would decide which people to execute and which ones not to. I interviewed families of people who were sort of mistakenly blown up, and we had a standard fee that we paid to people who were killed by mistake, $100,000 in cash around the Middle East, but it was impossible to drum up any outrage about these issues for years and years and years. Suddenly now, and that this is being done with drug boats. Everybody's found their moral center over this. I don't know. There's something about that doesn't quite scan with me, because every other one of our allies was okay with wantonly crossing borders, using drones, penetrating the airspace of various countries and killing people.
Don't we go into Colombia? Don't we go into the jungles of South America?
We made a movie about this.
Yes.
Right? And Clear and Present Danger, remember?
What is it exactly that's going on here? I'm not so bloodthirsty that I love to see crews of little boats blown up, but something is a little different here, that this would cause a cessation of intelligence sharing. This is the dog that did bark. You never barked before, but now you're barking. Well, let's not forget that those boats don't just have drugs on them. They have the potential for millions and millions and millions of dollars of black market money that flows all kinds of ways and doesn't just buy, jet skis for cartel leaders. It goes into banks, it goes into all sorts of things, maybe even in the Virgin Islands, who knows? And I see somebody worried a little bit about their business, maybe potentially. Since we can accuse anyone of anything now, why not worry that Britain has drawn a line around something that is a very curious thing to draw a line around, given what you've forgiven in the past?
Well, right. It's just the way all this is being reported. It's like, we have a regent who's committing homicides all over the world without any kind of regulation. Well, yeah, we already went through this, and there was no public uproar about it in either party when this happened really the first time. And these cases, which I always thought were very important,
we invaded Iraq and killed hundreds of thousands of people on,
right.
On jumped up
on
pretenses, on bullshit.
Right.
And Tony Blair and that whole crew had nothing but good things to say about it.
No, they signed off on the whole. If you read the Chilcot report, all that stuff. I mean, we cooked up this ridiculous, concocted explanation for why we had to go in and preemptively invade Iraq. It turned out to have been partially based on some term paper from some guy in California, like from a third grade school. The Brits knew all about our various shifting, stupid explanations, and they actually held more in-depth hearings about it than we did. And yet that wasn't enough to cause any severance of ties with the United States. Going to war on false pretenses, droning people without any kind of legal authority, just brazen violation of the Fifth Amendment. So yeah, am I bothered by it? Yeah, sure, yes, but it's also, I also find it odd that nobody remembers the other thing.
In my life as a journalist, especially around military sources and people who've been involved with intelligence and so on, it has been a constant theme that the smuggling of drugs, the smuggling of people, the world of rackets and of organized crime and black markets is very often adjacent to and symbiotic with the world of intelligence and security. Okay, you can't touch one without touching the other in some way.
Well, right. I mean, think about the San Jose Mercury News story. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And I know people who knew that reporter and knew him well. So I have friends who fought in the Afghan war who come back and say things like, making the world safe for the opium trade wasn't what I wanted to do when I went over there.
Well, yeah.
That's what I felt I had done afterwards. Yeah, they're just some jackass GI maybe, but a lot of them have that impression. And we have to be very careful who Trump may be angering in this case. is probably not, is probably more than just the Venezuelan power structure. We don't know because, once again, it's all hidden in the dark and gray world. But I would imagine that when those boats blow up, there are people who are mad other than Venezuelans. Ghislaine Maxwell, do you remember where she was hiding out? Do you remember what her husband did?
No.
He was the head of a company called Cargo Metrics. Cargo Metrics is a world shipping company. Yes. I didn't. I've just been in Seattle. In fact,
he's just trying to tell you look handsome, Walter.
Oh, okay. Well, all I'm saying is that Ghislaine's. I think she'd married him actually by the end of it, and the place where she was found was, what was the house of the head of Cargo Metrics. Look that up. The world shipping establishment, the kind of people that Jackie Kennedy went and married, for example.
Right. Yes.
Onassis and so on. Those people
and own the Yankees. Yep.
Yeah. The people who move stuff around the world, legal and maybe not so legal, are big players that you don't hear about much, and they don't want to be heard about much. But that is the infrastructure of our planet to some degree. And anything that gets smuggled has to kind of go through those ports, those kind of companies on those ships. And there's overlap. That's all I'm saying.
Yep, absolutely. I just wanted to put this up at fellow citizen with the hearts and Maduro. There is a little bit of like Maduro fashion that is a little weird. I just think that needs to be kept an eye on.
Maduro, yes. Jeffrey Sachs has come out in his defense, right? I saw that.
Yeah. Odd stuff. I'm not really sure what that's all. It's again whatever Trump's against. It's people.
Well, there are people, and I mean this is a legitimate point to bring up. Venezuela is an oil-rich nation, and the United States has a history of wanting influence over oil-rich nations, wanting to make deals with them favorable to us and so on. So I think the charge among some people is that we're not really after the drugs, we're after the oil.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's probably true.
Twofer.
It's a twofer. Okay, just a couple of quick things on Lord of the Flies. We'll get into this with more detail in the next show, I guess. But
yeah.
I thought we could just talk briefly because this is a story. One thing that where this is a little bit of a tie-in to current news is that one of the things that happens on the island, and I don't know, do we need to do a recap? I don't think we need to do a recap. A bunch of boys are trapped in an island. They're starting to go nuts, and there is
British public school boys, a mixture of very young and teenagers. And their goal is to be rescued. And the goal of their leader, Ralph, who's the handsome, fair-haired, natural quarterback style leader, is to keep themselves in good enough shape and even have a good time while they await rescue. And a schism develops between him and another would-be leader.
And the connection here is that a false story kind of starts to circulate on the island that there is
absolutely
that there is a beast.
And isn't there always a beast now? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was Russia, it was Putin. Now for many it's Israel. If you're on,
it was the racism health crisis. I mean, right. God knows what, right?
There's always a beast. What I found interesting reading it this time is that Goldman pretty much comes out and says on, I think it's page 81 of the version I was reading. It's electronic, so it's kind of meaningless. much comes out and says, when the first talk develops around there must be a monster, there's a beast, Jack, who has become the sort of primeval atavistic hunter character, he's starting to represent the id rather than the superego. He's representing the dark forces. He wants to hunt and kill pigs and get meat and so on. He says sometimes when you're out hunting, you get this weird feeling that you're being hunted. And that, for him, is the first evidence that there's a beast, that when he's out hunting, wanting to kill, he sometimes feels like he's being followed. And that is Goldman very vividly and overtly saying, it's your own aggression. It's your own cruelty. It's your own bloodthirstiness that you are projecting out into the wilderness. It's at the exact moment that they become hunters that they start to worry that they're being hunted. And that's a very wise point that I don't think is often brought to the surface in this book, that what they really fear is their own dark sides.
And there is a moment where a parachutist, I guess he's a pilot, a downed pilot who was parachuted onto the island.
Right.
The parachute gets caught in the trees and appears to swing from the top of a hill. But late in the book, there is a character named Simon who gets up close and personal to this creature who also assumes like a beast-like role for people on the island, and he realizes that it's an illusion. It's a dead person swinging, right? And there's a line: Simon felt his knees smack the rock. He crawled forward, and soon he understood. The tangle of lines showed him the mechanics of this parody. He examined the white nasal bones, the teeth, the colors of corruption. So up close, it's a parody, right? From far away, it looks very scary. But the schism is real. And you see it just before that. There's a confrontation between Jack and Ralph. And Jack essentially accuses him. Jack accuses Ralph of being insufficiently protective. He says, there's a line: Ralph made a sudden movement that became a stumble. Some of the boys turned toward him. I gave you food, said Jack, and my hunters will protect you from the beast. Who will join my tribe? I'm chief, said Ralph, because you chose me. And we were going to keep the fire going. Now you run after food. You ran yourself, shouted Jack. Look at that bone in your hands. In other words, he's accusing him of abandoning the duty to protect from the beast, which doesn't even really exist, it turns out, right? So the story's fake.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in objective terms, but I think Goldman is telling you that the beast is inside those boys, and they're seeing it everywhere. The quote I missed before was Jack saying, "But you can feel as if you're not hunting, but being hunted, as if something is behind you all the time in the jungle." Yeah, what's behind you is your fear of your own aggressive, murderous instincts. And I think in some ways we're looking at a battle between democracy and a dictatorship here too,
and religion.
Yeah, but Ralph very early establishes his rule through a vote. He has everybody vote, and he says, "Okay, I'm chief," and it's almost a unanimous vote. But Jack usurps his power by saying, you may have had the consent of the group early on, but you failed in the essential task, which is to keep us safe. and that delegitimizes you.
Yeah, what does that sound like, right?
Exactly.
The other big symbol in the book is the conch. The conch kind of represents due process, just like at the voting, right? When you blow through the conch, everybody comes, and it's sort of the idea that we do things by a civilized process.
Stacy Plaskett was Epstein's conch.
But they have abandoned the civilization at the end, and they end up just sort of chanting in this fervor, "Kill the beast, kill the beast, kill the beast," and it has terrible consequences, right? Like it leads to, and they forgive themselves for it. In their fervor to kill the beast, they end up killing one of their own, and what's amazing about it, and what's so familiar in this current moment is just how instantaneously it's all rationalized.
And who do they kill? It's very interesting.
Simon,
they kill,
same person.
Right. In some ways, everything that's written in the 50s by Western intellectuals is an attempt to explain what had happened in World War II, and maybe to forewarn about what might happen in the Cold War. And one thing that the beast must represent at that point is something like Judaism. I mean, in other words, for readers of that time, the scapegoat of the moment, they've had the Nuremberg trials, they've had the opening of the camps. It took a long time to get full exposure of what had happened in the Holocaust. I mean, it was still being processed when I was in school in the late 70s, at college. So I think he's warning us about, he's warning us not just about our atavistic and primitive and murderous capacity, but he's saying that beasts are usually projections of the unwanted parts of the self, the sort of a Jungian analysis that which you will not admit to consciously will come out and be perceived in others.
Yeah, and there's even an argument in the end between Ralph and Piggy, where Ralph keeps talking about, the things we did, and Piggy, he doesn't want to hear it. He just says it was an accident, right? It was an accident, and that's that. And so he makes a conscious decision to sort of keep it all inside, and that's the strategy for dealing with their behavior in that moment.
It really reminds me of COVID, with COVID as the beast, and people sort of becoming hardcore or laissez-faire, and that division replicating this one, in which safety is all, and the other person is no. Our institutions have to go forward. We have to, have to keep a normalcy to society. Any emergency which requires a strong man is probably implicated in this story.
And we've just heard one narrative like that after another. Yes, we have rules. We have constitutional protections. We have this and that, but we need to do this to keep people safe. And truth be told, that's been the argument on both sides. I would say it's been worse on the other side, but it has been invoked with immigration, right? We got to break some rules to make this omelet, and but the warning in this book is very explicitly about the divide between civilization and the almost like primitive worship of I don't know, not safetyism is the wrong word, but group strength, right?
Violence. really.
violence. Yeah.
I mean, you know, at some point early in the book, they even talk about rules. I think Ralph says we're going to have a lot of rules. We're English. The English have rules. The English do things best. That's what we're known for, rules. And you know, the question is whether Jack is a pure villain, Ralph's adversary, or whether he's kind of an inevitability who happens to possess the body of this kid. Is Ralph really the hero of this story, or is there a just charge that he is weak, unequal to the moment, and so on? So far in the book, he seems almost to be more purely a hero than I remembered.
Yeah.
If they'd listened to him, they would have had a fire. If they'd listened to him, they wouldn't have gotten lazy and let the fire go out. If they listened to him, they would have been rescued in the end and yet had a somewhat good time. Jack really is the devil. I mean, and when they end up making a kind of totem in the forest, it's a lot like, it reminds me of the Exodus story. It's very similar. Moses goes up on a mountain to get the law, to get the rules. And meanwhile, down at the bottom, the Jack character, Aaron or whatever, starts an orgy. It's
Right.
very, it's even the geography of the story is similar to that.
Yeah. Anyway, all that is interesting. I think we can probably.
Are we being addressed by our?
We are. I think we should end on this. This is an interesting question.
Because she'll say anything, and we won't.
At
That's why.
AB-WG7QE says Candace has almost 10 times the audience that these two have. I wonder why.
She started
10 times
at
the audience
Daily
on.
Wire.
Yeah. 10 times the audience. Well, yeah, maybe she does. But I don't know. Is that a qualitative judgment? I'm not sure.
Here's why she has 10 times the audience. I can answer it. She started at the Daily Wire, a heavily funded, heavily subsidized, heavily promoted podcast network. Okay. That got her up to the line. Then she went over and started her own deal with the most inflammatory and flamboyant and unprovable theories, such as the Jews are really gypsies. Coming from a gypsy background, I resented that.
Well, you get accused of being a Jew earlier in this.
Oh yeah, I mean, my mom's maiden name was Stein. I let that onto the internet once just to see who would pop up, and boy, they did. A lot of people, but you know, Morton Downey had a big audience too. Geraldo Rivera's revealing Al Capone's safe or whatever had a big audience. Whenever you promise the biggest revelations of all time and, you know, go up against world leaders saying their wives or men and so on, you can develop an audience pretty quick. I'm pretty happy that that's not my path in life.
So it's funny. Obviously, I wrote a book, Hate Inc., that was all about the phenomenon of sort of audience capture or the strategy of what they call audience optimization media, where you are identifying a segment of the public, you're trying to get as many of them as you can, and it's an easy thing to do if that's your only goal. And once the media business moved in that direction, you know, individuals like us, there are all kinds of choices that we can make that could get us audience if we were to do certain things, right? So, like at the beginning of Russiagate, I remember thinking, God, you know, if I speak Russian, if I just write one of those bullshit, scary books with onion domes in the cover, and you know, Trump with Trump Putin with some backwards R's, right? The "ya" character. I could make millions. I can get a $2 million advance tomorrow if I were willing to do that. So any media person who can get audience in the middle of any craze, and we're always in one now, right? So whether in the middle of COVID, you could get audience by surfing on the safetyism and, you know, going after the unvaccinated or whatever it is. I would caution anyone against looking too much into someone's audience numbers.
I see them, frankly, I see them as a negative credential. Anybody who has an audience over a certain number, to me, has done something to get that audience that I wouldn't do. Matt, during Russiagate, we're accused, and you were often accused because you spoke Russian, of being some sort of Putin agent. Okay. Now, since we have failed to take the Israel thing and drive it home in the way that these people have, we're often accused of being, you know, did you get your $7,000 or whatever?
Somebody just accused me of taking money from the Young America Foundation, which I thought the money was Chinese from that, but whatever. Go ahead.
But like here's the proof that we're nobody's pawns. If we were somebody's pawns, we'd have a lot bigger numbers, I promise you. If we had the Russian intelligence services or whatever, you know, the Israeli foreign service behind us, they'd get us up there, I promise you. We're not of use to anyone except the people who want to explore these things as honestly, creatively, and humorously as we do. But I promise you that if we were the instruments of some large power, we'd do great. We'd be doing great.
And we wouldn't be talking about books, that's for sure.
And we wouldn't be talking about books. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That would be the last thing we would be doing.
Israel's got you just where you want. They want
right, exactly.
promoting literacy.
They're doing another novel.
Yeah,
it's a plot. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out. Thanks Walter for hanging out. This was interesting show. This is going to be a high drama week. I can tell already. So I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about later this week. See you all then. Thanks everybody. Take care.